They called her cursed. They spat on her. They chased her from the market. But one day, the same people fell on their knees before her, because the poor widow they mocked became the woman that held their destiny. Before you continue, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this powerful story. The morning sun rose over Umuola village, but it brought no warmth to Adanna's life. She stood at the edge of the dusty road with a small wooden tray in her hands. On the tray were only three things: 2 sachets of pure water and a few pieces of roasted ground nuts. That was all she had to sell. That was all that stood between her and another night of hunger. People passed her without looking. Some hissed. Some laughed. "See this dirty widow again," a woman said, loudly. "Every day she comes to beg. Is her husband not dead enough?" Another replied. Adanna kept her eyes on the ground. Her wrapper was torn at the side, her slippers worn thin until her toes touched the earth. Her face carried the quiet weight of many sleepless nights. But the deepest pain was not hunger, it was shame. Beside her stood her son, Chibuzo, barely 8 years old. His stomach was swollen from malnutrition, his eyes dull with weakness. He coughed softly and leaned against his mother's leg. "Mama," he whispered, his voice dry like harmattan wind. "I'm tired." Adanna bent down and brushed dust from his cheek. "Just small patience, my son. God will see us today." They had come to the market since early morning. Not a single person had bought anything. When Adanna tried to approach buyers, they turned away. "Don't let that cursed widow touches your food," one woman warned another. "Since her husband died, her shadow brings bad luck," someone else said. The words cut her like blades, but Adanna said nothing. She had learned that silence was safer than answering people who enjoyed hurting her. Her husband, Ifeanyi, had died 2 years ago in a road accident. Since that day, everything changed. The same people who ate in her house during celebrations now crossed the road to avoid her. The same women who once called her "my sister" now called her "bad omen." Her legs began to shake. Hunger pressed against her chest like a heavy stone. Chibuzo's knees buckled. Before Adanna could catch him, her son collapsed into the red dust. "Chibuzo," she cried, dropping her tray. The sachets burst. Water soaked into the sand. She knelt beside him, shaking. "Wake up, my child. Please wake up." People gathered, but not to help. "Ah, see drama," a man said. "Every day this widow and her sick child," another muttered. "Carry your problem and go somewhere else. You are disturbing customers." Adanna lifted her son into her arms. He was light, too light for a boy of his age. His breathing was shallow. "Please," she begged the crowd, her voice cracking, "help me carry him to the clinic. I will pay later, please." A woman scoffed. "Which money will you pay? Go and meet your dead husband." Laughter rippled through the small crowd. Adanna's heart broke in a place she didn't know could break any more. She staggered toward the main road, carrying Chibuzo on her back. Every step felt like her bones were turning to dust. Her vision blurred with tears and hunger. The road shimmered under the harsh sun. Then she heard the sound of engines. A convoy of black SUVs roared toward the village, dust rising behind them like a storm. People rushed to the side of the road, bowing slightly, whispering names of powerful men. "Chief Obaife is coming." The big man from the city. In her weakness, Adanna stepped forward without seeing clearly. The lead SUV screeched to a stop. Tires screamed. Dust exploded into the air. The front bumper stopped just inches from Chibuzo's dangling feet. Adanna froze. For one terrifying second, the whole world went silent. She clutched her son tighter, her heart pounding so loudly she thought it would burst through her chest. The car door opened. A tall man in expensive clothes stepped out, his face hard as carved stone. Behind him, people bowed and smiled nervously. Adanna raised her eyes slowly, and in that moment, her life stood at the edge of something she did not yet understand. The dust from the sudden stop of the SUV still hung in the air like smoke. Adanna stood frozen in front of the vehicle, her heart beating wildly as she clutched Chibuzo tighter to her chest. The child groaned softly, his head resting weakly on her shoulder. The door of the black SUV opened slowly. A tall man stepped out. His shoes were so polished they reflected the brown dust of the road. His clothes smelled of wealth. His eyes, however, carried no kindness. People whispered his name in fear and respect. Chief Obaife, the big man from the city. Adanna lowered her eyes. She had heard of him. Everyone had. He was the kind of man whose name made people stand straighter and speak softer. He looked at the boy hanging weakly on Adanna's back. "Woman, are you blind?" he said coldly. "Do you know how much this car costs?" Adanna swallowed hard. "I am sorry, sir. Please forgive me. My son is not well." Chief Obaife laughed, a short, sharp sound without humor. "So because your child is sick, you should block the road? Is this how villagers want to die now?" Some villagers laughed nervously, eager to please the powerful man. Adanna's legs trembled. She shifted Chibuzo higher on her back. "I was only trying to reach the clinic," she whispered. "Please, sir, he is very weak." The man's wife stepped out of the second car. Her clothes were bright, expensive, untouched by dust. She looked at Adanna like she was looking at something dirty on the ground. "Is this the kind of people that disturb our journey?" she asked with disgust. "These villagers have no sense of shame." She opened her handbag, pulled out some notes, and flung them at Adanna's feet. "Take. Since you like begging in the road, use it to buy food and leave our sight." The money landed in the dust, some notes flying close to Adanna's worn slippers. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Adanna stared at the money on the ground. Her stomach twisted in pain. Her pride screamed. Her child groaned again, and hunger answered louder than pride. Slowly, she knelt. The villagers burst into laughter. "Look at her. See how she is picking money from the ground. Poor widow. She has no shame again." Each word stabbed her heart. Her fingers trembled as she picked the dusty notes. Tears dropped onto the money. She didn't look up. She couldn't. Chief Obaife shook his head in disgust. "People like you are the reason this village will never progress," he said. "Always waiting for handouts. Lazy people." Adanna wanted to speak. She wanted to scream that she was not lazy, that her husband's death was not her fault, that she had tried, that she was tired of being strong. But no sound came out. The man turned away. As he walked back to his car, Adanna finally lifted her head. Her lips moved silently. Not a curse, not anger, a prayer. "God, you see me." The convoy drove off, leaving dust, laughter, and humiliation behind. Adanna stood there, holding her son, surrounded by people who found joy in her pain. Her tears fell freely now. That night, she would lose something precious, and she did not know that heaven had already marked the moment. The sky darkened early that evening, as if the clouds themselves were tired of watching Adanna suffer. She walked through the narrow path that led to the small clinic at the edge of Umuola village. Chibuzo was barely conscious, on her back. His body felt hotter now, burning against her skin. Every step she took sent pain through her tired legs, but she didn't stop. The clinic light flickered. Inside, a nurse sat behind a wooden desk, fanning herself lazily. "Please," Adanna said, her voice trembling. "My son is very sick. He collapsed today. Help us." The nurse looked up slowly. Her eyes moved from the boy's weak face to Adanna's torn wrapper. "Where is your hospital card?" she asked. "I don't have one," Adanna replied. "I can pay later. I will work for you. I will wash the floors. Please." The nurse clicked her tongue. "No card, no treatment. This is not charity." Adanna fell to her knees. "I beg you, he will die." The nurse stood up, annoyed. "Carry your problem and go outside. You widow like to cause trouble." The words stung. Adanna wanted to scream, but fear held her mouth shut. She backed away slowly, holding her son tighter. Outside, rain began to fall. Heavy drops beat the earth, turning dust into mud within minutes. The path to her small mud house became slippery and dark. By the time she reached her hut, the rain had become a storm. Wind tore at the weak roof. Water dripped through holes in the ceiling. Adanna laid Chibuzo on their thin mat. His breathing was shallow. She pressed her ear to his chest, listening to each fragile breath like it might be the last. "God," she whispered, her lips shaking. "If I have offended you, forgive me. But please, don't take my son." Thunder roared in the sky. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed above them. The weak roof beam gave way. The roof collapsed. Mud, wood, and rain crashed into the small room. Adanna threw herself over Chibuzo, shielding him with her own body. Pain exploded across her back as the beam struck her shoulder. When the noise stopped, the hut lay in ruins. Rain poured freely into the broken space that had once been her home. Neighbors peeked from their windows, but no one came out into the rain to help. Adanna lay there, shaking, holding her son under the open sky, soaked, homeless, helpless. Hours later, the storm eased. Adanna dragged herself and Chibuzo to the church building nearby. She sat at the doorway, cradling him in her arms. Her body ached. Her heart felt empty. As night deepened, her eyelids grew heavy from exhaustion. She fought sleep, afraid that if she closed her eyes, something terrible would happen. From the darkness across the road, a figure stood watching. She did not see him, but he saw everything. The night air was cold. Adanna sat at the doorway of the church, her back pressed against the rough wall. Chibuzo lay in her arms, his small body wrapped in her thin wrapper. His breathing was uneven. Every rise of his chest made her heart jump in fear that it might stop. She rubbed his hands to keep them warm. "My son, hold on for me," she whispered. "Just hold on till morning." Her own stomach cramped with hunger, but she did not care. Fear had swallowed hunger. Her eyes burned from crying, yet tears kept falling, mixing with the rain that dripped from the broken roof. Across the road, the dark figure remained still. He was a man in plain clothes, not rich-looking, not poor-looking. His face was hidden by shadow, but his eyes were fixed on the widow and her child. He had seen everything, from the clinic rejection to the roof collapsing. He had followed, quietly, unseen. The man took a step forward, then stopped. People in Umuola did not like to involve themselves in other people's suffering. He knew if he stepped out openly, tongues would wag, and pride might push the widow to refuse help. So he chose another way. Minutes later, he crossed the road and entered the small clinic quietly. The nurse looked up in surprise. "I want to pay for the child that came earlier tonight," the man said calmly. "The widow with the sick boy." The nurse frowned. "She has no hospital card." The man placed a bundle of cash on the desk. "Open a card for her. Admit the child. Give him proper treatment. I will cover everything." The nurse's eyes widened at the money. "Yes, sir." Before leaving, the man paused. "And don't tell her who paid." The nurse nodded quickly. The man returned to the shadows. A few minutes later, two attendants walked toward the church. "Madame," one of them said softly, "come, bring your child. The clinic will take him now." Adanna stared at them, confused. "But they chased me away," she whispered. "I have no money." "It has been settled," the attendant replied. "Just come." Adanna's heart beat fast. Fear and hope fought inside her chest. She rose slowly and followed them, carrying Chibuzo back into the clinic she had been thrown out of hours earlier. Inside, nurses rushed her son onto a bed. They hung a drip. They wiped his face. They spoke kindly this time. Adanna stood there, shaking. Who paid?" she asked. The nurse avoided her eyes. "Someone that does not want to be known." Adanna fell to her knees again, but this time not in shame, in gratitude. She pressed her forehead to the cold floor. "God, thank you. I don't know who you sent, but you remembered me." Outside, the hidden helper watched through the window one last time. He turned away quietly. Adanna would never see his face. She would never know his name, but this night planted a seed that would grow into her destiny. The years passed slowly, yet they passed. Adanna never forgot that night in the clinic, the stranger who saved her son. But life gave her little chance to dwell on miracles. She had a boy to raise and a future to fight for. Umola village remained harsh. People still whispered, still mocked, still treated her like she had no right to dream. But Adanna dreamed anyway. By the time Chibuzo turned 8, the little money she could scrape from selling food, cleaning homes, and begging had grown into small savings. She moved to the city, leaving the village dust behind. The city was a world of lights and noise, far from the dusty roads and cruel laughter of her past. But it was also a place where one could be invisible, where one could start again. Adanna took cleaning jobs at office buildings, homes, even hospitals. Every job was small. Every step was careful. Every night, she counted her earnings and tucked them into a small, hidden tin. Chibuzo grew stronger. He laughed sometimes, though shadows lingered under his eyes. Adanna made sure he never forgot kindness, even when the world had not shown them any. One day, while scrubbing the polished floors of a hospital, she overheard two nurses talking. "Did you hear about the new investor?" one said. "Yes. They say whoever owns it is generous but keeps their identity hidden. Patients love them." Adanna froze. Her heartbeat sped. She whispered under her breath, "Generous, hidden. Maybe that is like the one who helped Chibuzo." She shook her head. Dreams were dangerous. Hope could kill faster than hunger if it was not tempered. But nights she prayed quietly. Prayers were no longer just for survival. They were for strength, for wisdom, for the day she could rise without depending on anyone. Years passed. Her tin grew heavier, her skills grew sharper, and Chibuzo, her son, grew taller, stronger, and began to smile freely for the first time in years. Then, one rainy afternoon, a letter arrived. Its envelope was plain, stamped from abroad. Adanna's hands shook as she tore it open. Inside was a note. "We have been watching your hard work. You are needed. A new opportunity awaits you. Come alone." She held the letter tight, chest pounding. Her life, the one that had been nothing but struggle, now whispered a possibility. Destiny. The wind rattled the windows. Outside, the city moved on, oblivious to the poor widow who had come far from the dust and mockery of Umuola village. Adanna pressed her forehead to the letter. She whispered a silent vow. "No matter what comes, I will never forget the hunger, the shame, or the nights we prayed alone. I will rise, and I will help those who need me, but I will never forget those who doubted me." Her eyes burned with determination. And somewhere, far away, the hidden helper from that stormy night smiled quietly, knowing that seeds once planted always grow. The city skyline glowed as Adanna walked through the hospital lobby, her steps steady, her head held high. Years of struggle had honed her patience, her strength, and her resolve. She was no longer the widow who trembled on dusty village roads. Meanwhile, far from her, in Umuola village and beyond, the world of those who once mocked her was beginning to shake. Chief Obaife's business empire, once untouchable, had started showing cracks. A trusted partner had betrayed him, siphoning funds into hidden accounts. Deals fell apart overnight. Suppliers refused to cooperate. The press whispered of scandal, of financial mismanagement. His wife, proud and sharp-tongued, now faced creditors' calls she could not ignore. The luxury that had seemed endless now teetered on the edge of ruin. But the real blow came when their only son, the same age as Chibuzo had been, fell gravely ill. The illness was sudden, severe, and relentless. Doctors shook their heads, saying that only a hospital with specialized treatment abroad could save him. Panic swept through the Obaifa household. The rich man paced like a caged animal, slamming doors and speaking to anyone who would listen. His wife screamed into her phone, demanding help that was impossible to find locally. The boy grew weaker by the hour. Every heartbeat that once brought laughter to the house now brought fear. Then came the twist of fate that no one could have foreseen. The only hospital capable of treating their son had a new investor. The investor's identity was hidden. Payments, arrangements, and admissions were handled with discretion. Desperate, Chief Obaife sent messages, couriers, and envoys. He offered everything, but each attempt was met with a polite refusal. The hospital could only accept patients with proper referrals through the investor's channels. Meanwhile, in the city, Adanna continued her work quietly. She had heard whispers of the hospital's new management, of someone generous but invisible. She had brushed the news aside until that morning. A letter arrived, a formal invitation this time from the hospital. The handwriting was neat, official. "Your skills and dedication have been observed. We invite you to assist in the care and management of critical patients. Your work here will make a difference." Her hands shook as she read. She had come a long way, yet she had never imagined that her path would cross with those who had once humiliated her. She did not yet know that the Obaife's son, the boy who mirrored Chibuzo's age, would be brought to her care. The threads of destiny were tightening, and soon the widow they once mocked would stand between life and death for the very people who had spat on her dignity. Adanna folded the letter carefully, her heart steady. She whispered a silent prayer, not for revenge, but for wisdom. God, let me be justice. Let me be mercy. Let me be the help they never deserved but desperately need. The storm of reckoning was coming, and Adanna was ready. The hospital doors swung open, echoing in the pristine, sterile hallways. Adanna walked through them quietly, her steps measured, every movement calm but purposeful. She had worked here for years, earned the trust of staff, and honed skills that could save lives. The Obeife entourage arrived shortly after, the same people who had mocked, humiliated, and laughed at her in Umuola village. Their luxury cars gleamed under the hospital lights, their faces masks of panic and desperation. Chief Obeife's son lay on a stretcher, pale and weak, attended by frantic nurses. The rich man's wife clutched her designer handbag, her eyes wide with fear. They did not see her at first. She wore a simple hospital uniform, her hair tied back, her face composed, almost serene. Adanna stepped forward. A nurse called her name softly. "Adanna, we need you to oversee this case," the nurse said, almost reverently. The Obeife's eyes flicked toward her, and then recognition, or the shock of it, swept across their faces. Is that her?" Chief Obeife whispered, disbelief coloring his tone. The woman they had spat on, mocked, and dismissed stood before them. Adanna approached calmly, her gaze fixed on the boy. Her eyes met theirs briefly, and for the first time, the power had shifted. The nurses quickly prepared the treatment, looking to her for guidance. Chief Obeife opened his mouth. He wanted to demand, to assert, to command, but words failed him. Adanna leaned over the boy, checking his vitals, adjusting the oxygen mask, instructing the nurses with precision and authority. Her hands moved with skill and confidence. Every action, every decision radiated competence. His wife's lips trembled. She's the one who—" "Yes," Adanna said softly, without turning to face them fully. "I am the one who will help your son survive." Time seemed to slow. The boy's weak breaths, the beeping monitors, the tension in the room, it all converged in that moment. The people who had once mocked her, who had thrown money at her dusty feet, who had laughed at her grief, now had no choice but to depend on her. Adanna's heart was steady. Her voice was calm. Her hands saved lives. And the irony was sweet. Not vengeance, but quiet, undeniable justice. She glanced at the Obeifes one last time before focusing entirely on the boy. "Your pride and cruelty brought you here," she thought. "But mercy is stronger than malice." The nurse whispered behind her, "She's amazing, so skilled." Adanna nodded. She didn't need their praise. They were about to learn that humiliation has consequences, and destiny has its own plan. The hospital room was tense. Every beep of the monitors, every whisper of the nurses, and every shallow breath of the boy echoed like a drum in Adanna's ears. Chief Obeife and his wife hovered nervously in the corner, their once imposing presence reduced to fear and helplessness. Adanna worked swiftly, her hands steady, her voice calm, giving orders that were precise and measured. Increase the oxygen flow, check his vitals every 5 minutes, prepare the infusion, keep him calm. Her authority was absolute. Even the most senior doctors in the room deferred to her judgment. For the first time, the Obeifes saw the woman they had once humiliated, not as a poor widow, but as a force of life itself. You are amazing," whispered the billionaire's wife, her voice trembling. We never imagined." Adanna glanced at her without judgment. I am not here to impress. I am here to save his life. Hours passed. The boy's condition stabilized. Color returned to his cheeks. His breathing eased. The Obifas were forced to watch. Every instruction she gave, every decision she made, underscored a truth they could no longer deny. The woman they mocked, spat on, and humiliated had become indispensable. Chief Obifa's voice, usually commanding, came out small and uncertain. Please, tell us, what can we do to repay you? Adanna's eyes were steady. She shook her head. Repayment is not necessary. But remember this, the way you treated people who are struggling, those you think are beneath you, comes back in ways you cannot imagine. You were spared tonight because of mercy. Learn it. The couple swallowed. Pride had no place in the room now. Fear, relief, and awe replaced it. Adanna turned her attention back to the boy. She smiled softly, quietly, more for him than for anyone else. Outside the hospital, the storm that once symbolized despair had passed. A new calm settled. The Obifas would never forget this day. Not the fear, not the helplessness, not the realization that a poor widow had become their only hope. Adanna had taken her place, not with vengeance, but with destiny. Her power was not in wealth or status. It was in resilience, compassion, skill, and the quiet strength that comes from surviving the worst the world can throw at you. And as she looked down at the recovering boy, she knew her journey had only begun. The days that followed were quiet but tense. The Obifas remained in the hospital, hovering near their recovering son. They watched every move Adanna made, every decision she took, every word she spoke to the nurses. The woman they had once mocked now held their child's life, and with it, a quiet power they could not challenge. At first, their pride resisted. They whispered behind her back, attempted to assert authority, but every suggestion was gently but firmly corrected. Each time, Adanna's calm competence reminded them that their wealth and status could not command respect or trust. They had only earned it through humility and care. One afternoon, the boy's condition stabilized. Nurses cleaned up the room, but Adanna stayed, checking the monitors, ensuring the boy rested comfortably. Chief Obife approached, his voice hesitant. Adanna, we want to thank you properly, he said, eyes darting around, unsure how to phrase gratitude. Adanna shook her head, looking at the boy instead. Gratitude is not needed. What matters is that he survives. That's enough. The Obifas exchanged glances. Their faces, usually filled with pride and superiority, now showed something new. Respect and a hint of shame. Do you forgive us? His wife asked quietly. Her voice trembled. Adanna paused, then turned toward them. Her eyes were soft but firm. I forgive those who once mocked me, she said. But forgiveness is only part of the lesson. Respect is earned, not given. And arrogance can blind you to mercy when you need it most. The words sank in like stones in still water. Later, as the Obifas left the hospital, humbled and thoughtful, Adanna stood by the window, watching the city lights shimmer in the evening rain. She felt a quiet satisfaction, not in revenge, but in the power of resilience, patience, and mercy. Her son, Chibuzo, now stronger and smiling, tugged at her wrapper. Mom, did I get better because of you, T? He asked. Adanna smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his face. No, my son. We got better because we never gave up, and because some kindness comes when you least expect it. And somewhere, far away, the hidden helper who had first saved them smiled quietly. Destiny was unfolding, and the widow was no longer the one who needed help. She was the one who could save lives, shape futures, and teach lessons that money and pride never could. Months had passed since the Obife's son recovered. Word of Adanna's skill, compassion, and integrity spread far beyond the hospital walls. People began to seek her help, not because she had money, but because she had something far more powerful: the ability to change lives. Adanna's life had transformed. From the widow begging on dusty village roads, she had risen to a respected professional, a trusted healer, and a symbol of hope. Her son, Chibuzo, now taller and confident, walked by her side. One morning, a formal invitation arrived. A renowned humanitarian organization had heard of her work and wanted her to lead a new initiative in the city and surrounding villages. Adanna's heart swelled, not with pride, but with purpose. The Obifes, humbled and cautious, approached her once more. "Madam Adanna," Chief Obife said, voice tight with respect and lingering fear, We do not know how to thank you. You saved our son. You have saved others too. We are in awe." Adanna looked at them, calm but unwavering. "Your gratitude is noted. But remember, life has a way of balancing itself. Those who lift others with kindness and not arrogance are the ones truly rich." The billionaire's wife swallowed hard. We treated you horribly. We mocked you, threw money at you, but you never let hate guide your hands. You saved lives, including ours." Adanna nodded. "I did not act for revenge. I acted because mercy and purpose are stronger than anger. Your lessons were harsh, but perhaps necessary, for you as well as for me." The Obifes bowed their heads in shame. Words failed them. They could only observe the woman they had once spat on, now towering in dignity, competence, and respect. Later, as she prepared to leave for her new humanitarian project, Adanna looked at Chibuzo and smiled. "See, my son, we have come far, from dust to destiny, from mockery to purpose. And we will continue to rise, not for pride, not for revenge, but to help those who need us most." As they walked into the bright morning sunlight, the city bustling around them, Adanna felt a quiet, undeniable truth. She was no longer the widow anyone could mock. She was a force of destiny, a living testament that resilience, kindness, and faith can transform even the deepest pain into unparalleled triumph. And the people who once laughed at her, they would never forget the day mercy became power and the poor widow became their destiny helper. Dear viewers, what lesson did you take away from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear from your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.